The luxury restaurant manager kicked out this old man, not knowing who he really is. Every day, we wake up and get on with our lives. Do we think about others who are less fortunate? They do not wake up in the morning to a glass of coffee or tea, but they start searching for a new job to take on or a slice of bread. We walk past many homeless people every day. Many people have the assumption that homeless people are only lazy. No one knows what they have been through in the past, and judging them can be a huge mistake. Let's take a look into the life of a man called Don Juan and what he faced. He started walking around the streets, searching for food. He came across a famous and rich restaurant chain and stopped in front of it. As he stared into the fancy glass of the restaurant, he got hungrier by the second. The people sitting inside the restaurant noticed this man standing and staring at their food, and they started to feel uncomfortable. The man was hungry and had no idea what to do. The delicious food just drew him closer to the glass, and without his knowledge, he started walking towards the door of the restaurant. There was no guard at this point, so he walked into the restaurant, looking at everyone around him. He got some glances from a few tables, but he ignored them. The manager of the restaurant noticed why everyone's attention was suddenly deviated and came out to see what was happening. He saw a homeless man standing inside his restaurant and he was outraged. He walked up to Don and asked him what he wanted. Don politely requested that he was hungry, and if they could spare some food for the older man, he would be more than grateful for their help. The manager kept quiet for a second, so Don thought that he might help him out with a little food, but to his surprise, he started screaming at him. He accused him and told him to get out of the restaurant before he gets even angrier. Juan did not give up on his words, and he tried to convince the manager. He tried explaining to him that all he wanted was a little bread. He is in his last days of life and his hunger might kill him sooner. The manager was so enraged that he started clenching his fist but did not want to do anything that might ruin the reputation of the restaurant. The guard had returned to the door from his break, so the manager stared at him with fire in his eyes. He wanted to insult this man more than ever now. He tried to stand taller than him and told him, "Go away and look for a job or take a shower and come back with cleaner clothes. But all I would allow you to do is stand and look from outside the restaurant, because no matter what, your kind of people have no right to walk into a place like this." Juan could not believe what he was hearing. Juan expected the man to either turn him down politely or hand him some leftovers at least, but the rude behavior made him feel like it's not worth living on Earth, even if it's just his last days there. Juan understood what more would happen if he stood there longer, so he started walking away, and this time he went to another branch, but at the same restaurant chain. Here, even before he could enter the place, he was stopped by the waitress. He requested her to let him in. He even told her that he was a regular there before. He used to have a lot of money earlier, but lost it all by accident. He tried convincing her to let her speak to the owner as he knew him. She started laughing at him and called the chef. The chef came out and asked him what he wanted. He told her the same thing he told the waitress. He used to be a regular at the restaurant and now is looking for some food, even if it is a piece of bread. The chef ridiculed him and told him to get lost in the place. Juan could not believe that not even a single place was ready to let go of a piece of bread. But he stood there assuming that some other employee would do something out of the goodness of their heart. But even the manager came out and asked him to dig the dumpster behind the restaurant if he wanted to eat something. Juan felt dejected, and he walked around the city, wondering, did humans lose their humanity? His hunger started to grow, and he suddenly realized that he knew someone personally in one of these restaurant chains. He knew Carlos, who happened to be the head chef in that restaurant. He happened to be the right-hand man of the owner of these restaurant chains and would be the next in line to get the restaurants in his name after the owner's death. This restaurant wasn't too far from the one he was at currently, so he started walking towards it, all while thinking about what the world has turned into. He knew Carlos for a very long time, and he knew that if not others, at least he would be by his side and offer him a little food to eat. As he walked into the restaurant, and this happened to be the oldest restaurant branch among all, he walked up to the chef and was cooking in an open kitchen and begged him for a little food. Carlos did not bother even looking up. As he was cooking, he asked the man to walk away and not trouble him. He continued to tell him that this was not a soup kitchen and he had to leave the restaurant before he called the security guard to kick him out. Juan tried to explain his situation to Carlos. He said that everyone so far has kicked him out, and all he needs is a slice of bread to stay alive. Carlos laughed and told him that other people did the right thing. He requested the man to leave the premises and get a job instead of begging for food. He told him that other people were right to dismiss him, thinking that he was a villain or madman or some sort. Carlos even went on to say that only people with money deserve to stay and eat in a place like this, and he had no right to be entering through the door even. He accused him of walking around, asking for food instead of getting a job and feeding himself. Juan could not believe that the person he knew for all these years could reply this way to him. He never thought that in the final days of his life he would be treated this way. Juan did not give up and stood there, trying to explain his story to Carlos. He told him, "No, sir, I used to be rich, and it was not by mistake, but I still lost all my money. Please do not tell me that you are heartless to the extent that you would not look out for your own kind." Carlos laughed as he told him about being a good man deep down. He smirked and told Don that forget about you, but the man who owns this restaurant chain is going to die soon, and once he does, all these restaurants are going to be his. He told him that Carlos pretended to be the best friend and the right hand of the owner only for his money and nothing else. So why would he pity a homeless man? Don was speechless, and he ran out of the restaurant before Carlos could say anything else. Don was emotional at this point and started crying. His faith in humanity was being crushed one piece at a time. He had never been this sad and dejected in his life. The words of Carlos kept ringing in his head. Carlos had mentioned something about the stupidity of the owner and his belief in doing good to the world. Don did not give up here, and he went to every chain of the same restaurant only to receive the same ignorance in every spot. He had covered every other spot begging for food, except for one. This was on the main street and the poshest amongst other branches. This was also a hot spot and attracted a lot of rich people. He knew that just like the others, even here, he would be treated the same way. As he walked near the restaurant, the security guard smiled at him and asked him how he was. Don was taken aback by this behavior. Not a single restaurant had treated him so politely so far. Don's face started to grow a strong smile. Don was pleasantly surprised and walked towards the guard. He then asked him what he wanted. Don went on to explain that he was hungry, and no one was ready to offer even a slice of bread to the man. The watchman smiled at him and told him to wait by the door while he checks what he can do for him. The guard called the manager out to the entrance. After a few minutes, the manager was outside and saw that an older man was standing there. Looking at him, he asked him, "Sir, tell me what I can do for you." Don goes on to explain that it has been days since he ate anything, and he wanted to eat some food. The manager smiled at him and told him to wait for a while, and he will arrange for something. Don was more than happy when he heard this. He held the manager's hand and thanked him a lot. Whether he was going to give him food or not, so far, he has not treated him in the wrong way. The manager told him to wait for a table to clear up so that he can eat inside in peace. Don was ready to wait for his table. He stood there waiting for half an hour. By now, 1 hour had passed and there was still no news from inside. Don understood that he was being bluffed to, so he decided to leave the place. He started walking away. It was almost 1.5 hours now, and the restaurant had emptied, and there was almost no one left inside. So Juan started walking away from the restaurant. He had not gone very far when the manager started running behind Don. He called out to him and asked him to come back. Don looked at him in disappointment. The manager was smiling and apologized for making him wait. He told him that they had already cooked the meal for him and that he needs to return. Don realized that his lost hopes were not true after all. He walked into the restaurant and was shocked to see what was in front of his eyes. They had set an entire table just for Don, with an elaborate meal course. They decorated the table as though it was for royalty. It was enough food for at least 5 people to eat. The manager got him seated and told him the reason behind this grand gesture and why he went out of his way to help Don. The manager told him that he has been working in this restaurant only for a year. The manager used to be a successful person, but one accident changed his entire life. He had to spend all of his life savings to save his life, but unfortunately, they could not save his wife and she passed away. The manager was so depressed that he got into alcoholism and ended up on the streets. One day, he walked into the very same restaurant, and the owner was kind enough to take him in and give him a new start to his life. He wanted to do the same for Don and help lift him. The manager left him alone to enjoy his food first. The rest of the staff walked in and treated him like he were royalty. They served each meal as he completed his food. Once he was done, all the staff members came to the door to see him off. Before he left, the manager told him that he would not let him go empty-handed. They all collected a little money from the staff and handed over some money. They also packed some food for later, and the manager told him to come back the next day if he was interested in getting a job and working here. While this was happening, every employee in the restaurant chain received a message from the owner of the restaurant that he would be visiting one of the branches. All other employees had to gather in one place for an important meeting. They were all dressed to their best and were waiting for the owner to arrive. The owner did not arrive, but they saw that Don was walking towards the restaurant. The rest of the employees started screaming at him and asked him to move away from the spot. While everyone was busy yelling at Don, the manager who fed him the previous night invited him in and asked him to enter the kitchen and wait there till he was asked to come out. More time passed, and the owner had not arrived yet. The manager started calling the owner and asked him if he was going to arrive at the location. The owner picked up the call and told him that he was already waiting in the kitchen. Everyone rushed inside and was shocked. Don had washed his face and fixed his clothes. The staff was left standing there in shock and shame. They did not know what to tell at this point. Everyone knew that he visited all the restaurants in the costume of a homeless man. Don was the owner of all these fancy restaurants. He told each and everyone about their behavior and what he felt in the past few days. He could not have been more disappointed with his own employees. From the beginning, there was no homeless man in the picture, but it was Don, the owner of the famous restaurant chain that tested all his employees. But why did he have to test his own employees? He received the bad news from his doctor that he has heart cancer and has very few days left. From the beginning, he used to preach and teach his employees to stay kind, but will they really follow the path of kindness? He needed to make sure his values are carried on. Don had no real family, and his only family was the employees in the restaurant, and more than anyone else, he trusted Carlos as he was his main man and best friend for many days. He could expect this kind of behavior from the others. Carlos was the one who broke his trust and spoke about Don in the worst way possible. He was happy that he learned this truth before he handed over his wealth to Carlos. He was happy to see the true faces of people before he died. Don stood there and looked at everyone in disappointment. He told everyone how badly he was treated in each branch, and not a single person was ready to give him even a piece of bread. Everyone was regretting their actions and started crying in front of him. They begged for his forgiveness and told him they would improve. Don went on to tell everyone about how they should not treat a person wrong only because of their clothing and status. They run a chain of restaurants, and giving food to the world is what they need to do. And once in a while, giving away free food to those who are in need will not kill them. He announced that the true heir of his restaurant chain would be the one on the main street that welcomed him and gave him food to eat. The rest who behaved in a bad way with him would be fired, and there were no second chances for anyone. They will run all his restaurants and take over his wealth. He wished the rest of them the best in life, and he spent all his last days in the restaurant that treated him well. Remember not to judge a book by its cover. and more importantly, be kind to one another.